Ladies and talks. Plymouth Sounder hosting. Tonight we have got Malin Beyond the Classics by Don Robinson. Don Robinson was the OC of George's teaching the fun diving. Now, because that's not fun enough, to take over as BZAC's head of diving and training. What an amazing individual he is. Previously, he was a helicopter pilot for the Army. I'm sure he'll tell us at one point during the presentation. But other than that, this is a trip about Malin Head. Just for other points to note, next week, we have no presentation due to the waterfront sadly having to take real proper paying punters for three-course meals. So Steve Mortimer's presentation has been delayed by another week to the 29th. Please feel free to get the links and join us there. And then diving happening over the week and a half, 2 weeks. Lots of diving conditions are stunning up there. Other than that, without any further ado,
introduction there. Hopefully, just John, can you just see, is it showing that big thing that says this meeting is being recorded on the stream?
Can I get rid of that? No, it isn't.
It isn't showing that?
No.
Okay. Right, there we go. Well, that's good news. But I could probably do to get rid of it for people. Yeah, there we go. Right, there we go. After that minor technical faux pas, hopefully we're good to go. Okay, so as Will has said, my presentation is about Malin Beyond the Classics. All the photos in here, by and large, are mine. Isn't mine. The reason I didn't take that photo is because if you have a look in the right-hand side under the buoys, I'm one of those divers. And if I tell you that photo is taken 35 miles offshore on a wreck that's 130 meters deep, you can see just how fabulous the conditions were that day. And there's a few other people in the room who I think were there as well, so we all remember it really well. So the first thing I'm going to do is a bit of context, and lots of you are probably going, well, where is Malin? Avid listeners to the shipping forecast will have heard it probably be mentioned on the shipping forecast. But for those of you who have better things to do, that's a map of Ireland, the island of Ireland, and that is where Malin is there. It's the very northernmost tip of Ireland. In a good Irish sense, that the very northernmost part of Ireland is, of course, in Southern Ireland, i.e. the Republic of Ireland. Northern Ireland is the bit to the right of there. So that's where Malin is. And you go, okay, well, that's relatively interesting, but why is it such a well-known diving location for technical divers? Well, like much of the diving in this country, I think you have to go back to the war. So that's a German propaganda picture, I think, from the First World War, and that's how they saw themselves. You can see there is the British Isles. Ireland and the mainland, surrounded by submarines that were obviously starving the country, that were sinking everything that moved, and that was what the Germans tried to do in both world wars to a greater or lesser extent. There's another propaganda photo from the Second World War, propaganda poster from the Second World War. So they obviously the lion, that's us, clearly being stabbed to death by lots of submarines with swastikas on the back. So it was a really important feature of both world wars is the submarine campaign, and because of that, obviously we've ended up with lots of shipwrecks, and we obviously all love diving them. So, but why exactly was Malin so important in the submarine campaigns of both world wars? Well, to understand that, you need to look at basically where the ports are on the west coast. So those are the kind of the main ports there: Glasgow, Belfast, Liverpool, and Bristol. Obviously, there are other ones, but in terms of scale and volume and everything, those are the key ones. If you look at where the German submarines were based, kind of Kiel, probably a bit further to the right of that dot. In the First World War, the Germans had submarines based in Flanders, in Belgium. So which is where that second star is. And then in the Second World War, obviously they captured all of France, and they based submarines Saint-Nazaire in France, which obviously offered easy access into the Channel, into the Atlantic. So those are where the German submarine bases were. Those are the ports that we were trying to get our shipping to. And if you think about it, Ireland is kind of in the way. So therefore, there's two major routes. There's that one there, which has the obvious flaw of being relatively close to the German submarine bases. And then you have that one there, which is a bit further away from the submarine bases, and therefore is where you're going to get quite a lot of shipping. And that is basically where Malin is. So you can see there, Malin is basically in a bottleneck where large amounts of shipping are coming into the British Isles. So obviously the Germans knew this, and therefore they sent put a lot of their submarine effort into attacking shipping in that area, and that is why off the coast of Malin, off Northern Ireland as opposed to Northern Ireland, there's quite a lot of shipwrecks, and that's why it's a mecca for diving, particularly for technical diving. So that's why there's lots of wrecks there. That's why people travel from all over the world to go diving there. This presentation is entitled Beyond the Classics. So it does therefore beg the question, what are the classics? And the classics is kind of a loosely defined term, a number of wrecks. You can't say for certain, that this one is and this one isn't, but by and large, there's probably 4 that people would consider the classics. The first one of which is HMS Audacious. Great name. This was back in the days when the Royal Navy had proper names for ships, they're a bit wetter. If I'm yeah, wow, very good. And these things are all true. So HMS Audacious. What was HMS Audacious? Well, it was a dreadnought battleship. I love the idea that you call battleships dreadnoughts. That is just kind of shows what they're all about. So dreadnoughts were one of those transformational moments in warfare. The first dreadnought to be launched made every other naval ship at the time obsolete and kicked off this massive arms race in the beginning of the 20th century. So this was one of the very newest, most up-to-date, the most prestigious battleships. And as you can see there, you'd be pleased to know, in fact, that isn't you, Paul. I thought I was going to put the photo of you up today, but it isn't you. Sorry about that.
The wrong hand.
Yeah, there we go. Bad-handed diver.
I think that's actually Will, actually, yeah.
That actually makes it even worse.
Yeah.
So as you can see there, those are massive 13.5-inch guns lying on the seabed. You can see the visibility is absolutely stunning, and that is one of the must-have photos for people who go to go and do this diving. With those guns, with the visibility, you want that photo. So it was a big ship, 25,000 tons. And for those of you who dived Scapa Flow, this is the same sort of scale and size as the Kronprinz, and the very biggest ships in Scapa Flow. The difference between this and those is that this was fully bombed up and equipped and has never been salvaged. So everything that should be on a ship is still down there. It was sunk in October 1914 by a mine, and this, as you can imagine, was a huge shock to the Royal Navy. Their most prestigious ship hit a mine and sunk. Incredible loss to them. In fact, they were so concerned about it that they actually put a news blackout on the sinking all the way through the war. So they continued to publish where HMS Audacious was during the war, and they didn't say at the bottom of the sea, which is actually where it was. And this was even though some Americans on a nearby ship had taken some video of it sinking. But anyway, so the Admiralty kept it secret. And as an example of the kind of things that you can see on this wreck, those are bronze torpedo tubes. So you see 2 torpedo tubes. Those are about 5 or 6 meters long. The value of those is incredible. How much do you reckon they're worth, Tony? Yeah. So clearly Tony's not been there. There are very, very few places in the world where you can see something like that on the seabed. All the stuff from Scapa is long since gone. July's about 63 meters of water, and relatively accessible with modern technical diving techniques and technical equipment. I've even been on here when there was an open circuit Trimix diver on there, so that's an indication of the fact it's relatively shallow. And as I say, she's fully armed and has never been salvaged. As you can see there, there's Scott, you know, on top of a cargo, on top of a load of 13.5-inch shells, a load of brass Clarkson cases, and a scooter that he managed to bring back, which is not something that happens on every dive. So HMS Audacious, one of the must dive wrecks in Scapa, and therefore one of the classics, relatively easily accessible. The next one that most people would consider in the classics is probably even more photogenic than the HMS Audacious, which is the Empire Heritage. This was a very large freighter. And as you can see there, one of the things she was carrying was Sherman tanks. And there, once again, yeah, that's Scott again, yes. And he was my model for most of my diving out there. And the very few places where you can dive tanks scattered on the seabed in the way that you can on this wreck. 13,500 tons, so you know, huge. If you consider some of the very biggest shipwrecks that are off Plymouth, things like the Afrique or the Medina, neither of those is as big as the Empire Heritage. So absolutely incredible size. It was torpedoed in 1944, so towards the end of the Second World War. Once again, you know, showing that these the Germans were continuing to sink ships, you know, relatively close to the shore all the way through both world wars. Once again, another tank there, another picture of Scott, looking pretty good there. Only this time, I think he's got a proper rebreather. Yeah. Probably if it's got bubbles, it might have been one he borrowed off Will. It's about a bit deeper, 67 meters, but well worth it. You know, you can see the cargo there, and as I said, lots of tanks and trucks and various other bits and pieces down there. An absolutely fantastic dive. Another one of the classics. Third of the four classics I'm going to mention is the Justicia, which is a massive liner, and once again extremely photogenic. That's the bow, with another photo of Scott, and you can see why people want to go there, want to see. You know, you just have a look at that. That's got to be what, 10 meters off the seabed, I guess.
Not like that now. Wasn't like that this year.
Yeah, you knocked it over, Paul. The bow of the Justicia, absolutely fantastic. And once again, 32,000 tons. So that is one of the very, very biggest shipwrecks that there is in British waters. So a real privilege to dive it. Torpedoed, that's one of the props. I think there's 3 or 4 props, and once again, you can see the scale of that. I can see Tony's eyes, you know. It's like watching someone win the jackpot. He's crying a bit that it's still there. Sorry, there's very bad feedback here, Tony. Nobody can hear that. And a bit deeper, once again, 68 meters deep there. And another fabulous dive, another one of the classics. And there's a side scan of it, and you can see there 12 boilers. Gives you an idea of the scale. The bow is obviously down here at the bottom. You can see all the boilers into the engines and the props up at the top of it. Not a dive you can do on not a wreck you can do on a single dive unless you've got a scooter, obviously, and even then you're probably going to miss half of it. So incredible size, and you know, rightly one of the Malin classics. Well, the last one of the 4 classics I'm going to talk about is a submarine. Boo hiss, I hear you all say. But actually, the U-89 is fantastic dive, and these photos are from Rick Ayrton. I have dived it. It was the first dive I did in Malin. Unfortunately, I didn't take my camera, which is one of those things I've always regretted. But so Rick kind of gave me permission to use his. But you can see there, you know, I don't know what the visibility is there, 15, 20 meters plus. All the classic features of submarine there. This one was rammed, and obviously that's pretty much where it was rammed there. And supposedly the HMS Roxburgh, which is the vessel that rammed it, when it got back to port, had bits of the submarine embedded in the bow.
Let's see if I could grow any lemon tree.
Sorry, Phil.
No worries, we're having a food interlude.
That's from half a lemon.
Fair enough. You could try.
The Malin, the U89 is 60 metres deep, so is often used as the Malin shakeout dive. It's often done on itineraries there as the first one people do before they go a bit deeper. And as you can see there, fantastic dive. So I've shown you the 4 classics, but this is a map produced by an organisation called Infomar, who are an Irish government organisation whose job is to map the seabed off Ireland and produce information about it. And one of the things that they do is they're very, very good at producing information on wrecks and where they all are. And as you can see there, absolute ton of wrecks. There's wreck sites. That's the chart off Malin, and once again you can see that looks like a wreck diver's dream. There are literally wrecks everywhere. So if we look at the ones that I've talked about, those are 4 of the ones that I've talked about, and you can see there's an awful lot more there. But I'm not talking about the classics. I'm talking about beyond the classics. So the ones I'm going to talk about now are the Vicna, the Devonian, the Manchester Commerce, the Amazon, and the Transylvania, which is the deepest of the ones that I've done out of there. And I've dived all of these over the 3 different trips that I've done to Malin. Quite a few of them more than once. So the Vicna, actually really sad story. The Vicna, it's a converted liner. You can see it's converted because obviously they stuck guns on it. Even in those days, it wasn't normal for liners to go heavily armed. But during the First World War and before the First World War, lots of ships had hard points fitted so that if they needed to be, they could be requisitioned by the Admiralty, fitted with guns, and that's what happened to the Vicna. Quite big, 5,500 tons, so slightly smaller than the James Egan Lane in terms of tonnage, but about the same sort of size as East Point for those of you who've done it. That's the engine, which, as you can see there, stands probably 8 to 10 meters tall. There's no scale on that, but it is absolutely massive. And it just vanished in December 1914. So nobody ever heard, all the crew were lost, 200 and something, nearly 300 people. And apart from a couple of guys who washed ashore in Ireland, to this day, nobody has any idea what happened to the Vicna. It could have hit a mine, or it could have been, just one of those things where it was bad storms at the time of year it was lost. It could have been that it just, had problems due to the weather, maybe the engine stopped or something like that, but it just completely vanished and was found, probably about 100 years later when people dived it. The thing about Malin is, obviously, it just keeps on getting deeper and deeper and deeper until eventually you hit the Atlantic Trench, and obviously it goes down to unbelievable depths. So as you go further out, you get deeper. And the Vicna here is 85 meters deep. So step again beyond the classics, and why it's not dived anywhere near as much as the classics. And the feature of it, I've only done it once, but the feature I remember was that engine. The other feature I remember is that the shot line wasn't there when we got back. So Scott and myself, it pulled out of the wreck, and there was only a couple of us actually managed to get on the wreck. So we ended up doing we blobbed off at 85 meters. Tides are ferocious in Malin, so we spent our entire sort of 2 hours of decompression, mainly wondering if the boat was going to be there when we got to the surface. Fortunately, it was. So there was a happy ending to our part of this tale. But there's the Vicna. So another great dive and something beyond the classics. The next one I'm going to talk about is probably one of my favourite dives, which is the Devonian. And this is another merchantman. Once again, that's got another photo of Scott at the bow there. And you can see there the anchor chains leading away, and you can see the scale of them by how big they are compared to Scott. Incredible. All these wrecks, the scale of them is just mind-boggling. Once again, 10,500 tons, broadly the same sort of size as the Afrique or the Medina. Torpedoed in 1917. That is one of my favourite photos. I've slightly enhanced it so it looks a bit better on the screen. But you know what that does is give you the feel, I think, for the scale of the wreck. You can just see all the ribs that make up the wreck lying down on the floor. Like lots of the wrecks in Malin, this one was heavily depth charged, probably in the Second World War. They would get something on sonar or whatever, and they would go and just chuck a couple of depth charges on it. So it meant lots of the wrecks from the First World War just got depth charged and depth charged. So any vertical scale they had soon disappeared under constant blasts. But you can see there the diver probably looking around going, "Oh, where's my buddy?" but I took that from about 20 meters above him on the shot line. It's 80 meters deep. There's another photo of it. Well, another photo of Scott and the wreck, and you can see there, like lots of the ships, it was defensively armed, and that's the gun at the stern. The next wreck I'm going to talk about is the Manchester Commerce, or what is probably the Manchester Commerce. It's not. I don't think it's been 100% identified. This is another merchant ship, and you can see there that's the prop shaft. You can have a look to the left-hand side. You can see a diver there, providing a bit of scale. Incredible. Once again, the size of these things, and also, the visibility is pretty good, as you can see there. And that is once again at 80 odd meters, so incredible, the ability to take photos at that depth. The ambient light that you get down there is pretty incredible. 5,500 tons. Once again, you can see 3 boilers there. You can see 3 divers. There's 2 with torches, and there's actually one to the left. And you can see the shot line coming up there. Once again, gives you a feel for the scale and the visibility that you get out there. Which makes diving, makes the diving such a pleasure. Another December 1914 casualty. If the wreck that we dived was the Manchester Commerce, that's when the Manchester Commerce was lost. 85 meters deep. I think, don't know who that is actually. We know it's not Paul due to the torch. But once might be Scott actually. Providing some scale, massive, great big massive boilers. Those are the ones that we've seen on the previous shot, and it's full of crockery like that. So if you're into your crockery, it's a wreck to go and see. I did lots of these. I've got videos of. Unfortunately, that's head-mounted video, so all the video is a bit jerky. I haven't quite learned to keep my head still when I'm wearing the power lens. Another fantastic wreck, and once again, the size of it just means that you can't do it on a single dive unless you've got a scooter. I think on this dive, there was a couple of Polish lads with scooters, and very handily they gave us a lift around the wreck, which is the way to do it. The next one I'm going to talk about is my favourite one in Malin. I've done it twice. I'd love to go back there again because it's another stunning wreck, absolutely massive. It's an ocean liner, and that is the only photo I have of it, which is really disappointing. But Will's pleased to know that he's in there, as is Paul, I think. Yeah, so they're both happy, and you can see there once again the visibility. And when you consider, 10,000 ton wreck, torpedoed in 1918, and that is nearly 120 meters deep. Incredible to get that level of ambient light down there. The first time I dived it wasn't like that, but the second time, that's when that photo was taken. And once again, because of the depth and because of the size, you can only really scratch the surface. And this is a liner, so you go down, and this dive we went down and literally landed on the silver service drawer. There was piles of forks and knives and plates and cutlery dishes and all sorts of things. Absolutely incredible.
Which we left there, obviously. But incredible to see those things on any wreck, frankly. And it is, the other nice thing about the Amazon is it hasn't been heavily depth charged, or if it has, it hasn't had much impact on it, is because it is quite significantly upright.
even though lots of the decks are crushed down and some of the hull has fallen in, but it is upright, so it really looks like it. And the last wreck I'm going to talk about is HMS Transylvania, and this was an armed merchant cruiser, so another one that was taken up from trade, and they stuck a load of guns on it. And as you can see there, that's one of the guns. That's an anti-aircraft gun. That's nearly 17,000 tons. So once again, you know, huge wreck. There's another gun, and Will be very pleased to know that's a photo of him in there to give you a bit of scale from the gun. And you know, that gun has everything on it. It's got the sights on it. It's got all the wheels on it. You know, everything is there. And as you can see, you know, covered in net to give it a real kind of sense of on. 1940, that one was torpedoed. So another Second World War one. And as you can see, they're 130 meters to the seabed, which meant that we didn't get very long on it. I think we did about 18 or 20 minutes bottom time over a 4-hour run time. So you've got to be pretty dedicated to go down and do it, but fantastic and a great achievement. You know, we were absolutely buzzing when we came up. So what I've done there is just giving you a bit of a talk about some of the classics, some of the wrecks that there are beyond the classics, and hopefully you'll agree that what I've shown you there is some absolutely world-class technical diving, aided by the fact that the conditions can be, you know, absolutely stunning out there. And I have to say, the 3 trips I've done, I've been very lucky. Obviously, it is in the Atlantic. It is off the north-west coast of Ireland, so that isn't going to happen all the time. And I'm sure I'm going to get blown out at some point. But so far, so good. You can see, even when you're doing your deco, you can see they're absolutely, you know, unbelievable. That's kind of Red Sea visibility. And the other thing about it is because there is so much to do out there, there's almost limitless possibilities. I'm sure you could dive there every day for years and scratch the surface of what there is to be done. So, ladies and gentlemen, that's the team from this year's trip, many of whom you will recognise. Obviously looking very happy. That's just after we've come off the Transylvania. Clearly everybody buzzing, despite 4 hours, most of which was spent on the trapeze at about 6 meters, but absolutely buzzing from the achievement. So if anybody's got any questions, obviously happy to take them either here or online.
I'll kick off. Yeah, have one prep before we do that because they're quite posed. So one of the technicality because you're going to have to do the prep.
So I've 2 of my trips have been in July, and that would appear to be a lucky month for me. In fact, now all 3 of my trips have been in July, so maybe I've just been lucky. But yeah, and my next trip this year is next year is in July as well. In terms of posing for photos, the bottom line is I don't really get people to pose for photos, and the reason for that is because by and large, people aren't very keen on wasting their time as they see it posing for photos, with the exception of Scott, who, it has to be said, is a bit of a poser and is more than happy to take direction. I think the first year we went, he was so pleased with the photos that he wanted some more like that. So this year we did discuss what we were going to do beforehand, and we went down there equipped with kind of video lights we could put on the seabed and various other bits and pieces, and it did work relatively well.
2 points. We all modelled on the Audacious because we had.
Oh yes,
yes, because we all wanted the photo in front of the guns.
Everybody wanted the money shots on the guns, so yes, they did all model on that. We did have a this is what we're going to do, so we did for that one, yeah. So
from online, from Kimberly, we have, what mixes did we use on the Amazon and Transylvania? And I should be able to answer this, but I can't remember for the life of me.
The short answer is we use the BZAC gas density tables to find our diluents and our bailout mixes. I think we
It's 985.
yeah, whatever it is on the gas density tables for the open circuit bailouts, we tended to go a bit richer than is recommended. So we had a slightly higher PO2 than you would normally recommend, but that was on the basis that we were going to. The assumption was that as soon as you bailed out, you were going to be heading to the surface and therefore getting off the bottom as soon as possible. Hopefully that covers that.
Yeah. Otherwise, on the floor. Sorry. Anyone else from the floor? There must be something else. Like, when's the next trip you're organising, Dominic?
It's full. Because basically everybody who came back from that trip immediately booked for next year, and very sensible too. Okay, guys, if you've got no other questions, then
what marine life species did you see down there? See anything of significance?
there was a small number of lesser spotted divers.
Yeah.
Actually, saying that, I'm just going to answer here for Dom, which fascinated me. On the Transylvania, I don't think I was nuts because of the mix I was on, but I can honestly swear to say that I saw what I would normally describe in the Red Sea as a scorpion fish, and but it was a browner kind of version of the scorpion fish.
And only about that's the size.
Sea scorpion.
Yeah, sort of size. And I just was.
We've got things like that in our world.
Well, I mean, that demonstrates the money I spent on my University of Southampton oceanography degree was well wasted. But no.
So Keith, I have seen a seal on the Empire Heritage. And when we dived the Amazon the first time, one of the guys saw a mako shark on the deco stop and has video on his power lens. So there's a big argument whether it was a mako or something that looked like another type of shark. So there was a big argument over what sort of shark it was, but the general view came down in the view that it was a mako. And we've also seen, not underwater, but we've seen seals out on some of the further wrecks out as well, on the surface. So, sort of 25.
They're presumably out to fish. So the wrecks have lots of fish, just like our deep wrecks have lots of fish. When I say deep, I mean 30 meters.
They do have lots of fish. It's interesting how in the photographs they didn't really show up. But in the video, if you want to see the plastics on video, I've got some on YouTube, and they're crowded with fish.
Yeah, there are
attracts the seals fish.
There are tons of fish on them, obviously, because they're great habitats for them. I think I've got a photo of a lobster on the Justicia.
We're into what divers call marine life now. I call marine life things like deep sea fans and sunset cup corals and Devonshire cup corals and things like that.
There was Irish cup corals, not Devonshire.
You lost me. To be honest, Keith, you lost me inedible.
It's what divers call marine life. It's what I call marine life. From a logistics point of view, was this quite long planned in advance, not just a trip, but the dives, destinations, and just like you hear an expedition, costs X amount of money, but you're hiring a boat that goes 35 miles outshore, that costs X. Was it accessible relative in terms of?
So the boat that I've used every time is the boat called the Laura Dean. There's two boats that essentially operate to dive these wrecks, but they mainly do the deep wrecks, and those are the kind of people who go there. So when you go there, they are absolutely set up for doing this kind of diving. So they put the trapeze in. They put the shot in. They put the trapeze in. They do nice little things like when you're on the trapeze, they drop in lines so that you can clip off your deep stages on them, and they'll put all your people with the scooters, they'll pull them up on board the boat. They're used to moving divers, in huge amounts of kit around the boat and getting them in and everything. So they're absolutely set up the technically. If you want it, they'll supply gas and soften lime and those kind of things. So it is what they do. It's not, you know, often you go out on a boat and it's something they do occasionally, but this is their bread and butter. In terms of planning it, then obviously, you know, the people you go out there with know what kind of diving you're aiming at doing. So therefore they go out, you know, dived up, but also with, you know, bailout mixes in their stages and everything. So we were, you know, getting that all sorted in a couple of weeks before we went out, so that it was all there. And you take out enough softener lime and, you know, all those kind of things. And then, as with all diving, but particularly with this really far offshore diving, it's all about the weather. Yeah.
So to add to that, we had a spare lid for the AP units, and we've learned that you don't lie on your forms when you're getting on a ferry.
Lie's a strong word. Sometimes you just don't say everything.
Okay.
Yeah. So yeah, no, there are particular challenges with taking large quantities of diving cylinders, in particular, on ferries. We probably need to plan that a bit better next year.
What's next?
What's next?
Yeah.
Oh, we're going back.
Go back.
Yeah. I mean, there's 4 people in this room who were on that trip, and a few other people have dived Malin, and there's no doubt it's completely addictive. I will go there rather than going to the Red Sea or Malta or, you know, anywhere like that, just because it's you know, it's such a buzz.
Right, well, thank you very much, Dominic. Yeah, on that note, I mean, Blue O2 have just gone into administration, so you might as well go to Malin instead of the Red Sea, it might do. Not that they're not previous employers. Anyway, no, thank you very much for that. That was excellent. There are opportunities to get all your training for this sort of diving within the branch. So that is a big thing, and within BZAC as well. Obviously, the head of diving and training is possibly in the room, along with the chief examiner, technical diving. So you can also speak to them as well. So if you are interested in that sort of diving, please speak to DO or Dom. That would be brilliant. Otherwise, dives coming up, and more importantly, 2 weeks time, rediscovering HMS D1, which I believe, Scott, you dived. You were involved with the diving of that. Steve Mortimer's giving that. It's going to be fascinating because he is an absolutely fascinating individual with some really great interests. And further on, the following 2 weeks after that, the week after that, BLS and O2 with Mr. Parler from the DDRC.
Really?
Yes, really. Yes.
Is that the 13th?
No, that's the 6th. The 13th is the trip to DDRC.
Right.
But please keep notes on the Facebook group for any further updates. Anything else? Any questions for Dom,